हेलो, इसको फिक्स करने की कुछ करो नहीं, हर बार ये प्रॉब्लम पर रिजेक्ट करता।
Good morning. Happy monsoon to all. After heat, long-awaited monsoon arrived, and now the public are suffering from heavy monsoon, heavy rain. So both sides, pros and cons. Anyway, so before we start our today's session, let's do our protocol. Let's start with our institute motto, then national, followed by national anthem. अब शुभ नामे जागे, अब शुभ आशीष मांगे, अब जय गाथा, जन मंगल दायक जो विभाग भाग्य विधाता, जय 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 हे भारत माता की जय। So we are coming back with our regular sessions for tax series under new Income Tax Act. So I think most of the in this series we have covered almost all the house property, salary income, other sources, penalty procedures. So only capital gain part was left. So who is better than Punjabi sir? So we were under discussion with him. So he's kindly agreed for this having this lecture with us today. So thank you, Punjabi sir, Jagdish Punjabi sir. So I invite our young coordinator, Jwala Trivedi. So as promised earlier, I'll pick one past convener and one young member coordinator as a coordinator to grooming our new CA members. So Jwala is one of young coordinator group from one of the young coordinator group. So she will give a brief introduction followed by memento for our appreciation. Jwala, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, sir. Like sir said, in the previous session, we had discussed all the provisions except for this because we have kept a special session for this by a very senior, experienced person, Mr. Jagdish, sir. So I would like to introduce him. Mr. Jagdish Punjabi is a practicing chartered accountant, practicing mainly in the areas of direct tax advisory and representation since 1989. He has secured the rank in Inter CA examination. He practices in his individual name. He has been a lecturer in accountancy and taxation for a period of 17 years in Ghanshyam Das Saraf Girls College of Commerce and Economics and St. Andrews College of Commerce and Economics. He is a contributor to the featured tribunal news published in the Journal of Bombay Chartered Accountants Society. He is a regular speaker at various seminars all over the country and has also presented papers and authorized articles. He is regularly invited as a guest faculty at the training programs conducted by the National Academy of Direct Taxes, Nagpur, and also by Direct Tax Regional Training Institute, Mumbai. Welcome, sir. We now proceed to the memento.
Yes, sir. September.
Mine. Mr. Bansal, the convener, Mr. Bhavesh Shah, the deputy convener, Bijal, the coordinator, deputy convener rather, and Jwala. Thank you for your kind words, Jwala. The topic which we have this morning is capital gains with reference to the 2025 Act. Basically, the mandate is not to get into the boards of each of the provisions capital gains because that will take 2 or 3 days at minimum. But what we have on the table before us is a comparison of the provisions relating to capital gains as they are in the 1961 Act and as they are in the 2025 Act. So what we are going to see over next 100 minutes or so will be what are the changes which the 2025 Act has carried out to the provisions of 1961 Act dealing with capital gains. We will try to pick up as many changes as we can. Some may be useful to somebody, some may not be useful to somebody, so on and so forth. But we've tried to pick up as many changes as are possible. ये डुप्लीकेट सेटिंग कर दो डुप्लीकेट सेटिंग कर दो हमारा चेंज हो गया है इसको एक बार स्टॉप शेयर करो ये डबल स्लाइड नीचे
Double stand.
इधर आता है डुप्लीकेट सेटिंग का जो जो था उसको चेंज किया हमने,
Yeah.
हमने रखा था वैसे ही। Okay. Now, why did we change the law? I'm sure this must have been covered, but many a times when the golden rule of interpretation does not work, one has to look at the intent of the provisions. And the courts have also looked at the intent. Where the golden rule of interpretation is that interpret what is written. But when what is written is capable of two meanings, then the question arises whether I adopt meaning one or I adopt meaning two. It is at that stage that the court looks at the surroundings as to what was the intent, what are the external aids of interpretation, and thereby the court and thereby the court then interprets the provision. ठीक है, फुल स्क्रीन चाहिए नहीं, पहले किया था हमने, सेट करके रखा था, आपने चेंज कर दिया उसको। आगे जब सेट किया ना तब ऐसा किया था, मेरे को नहीं पता, छोड़ दो। No, it is not about the mic, it is about the presentation. Okay, now the concept or the need for introducing a totally new act was envisaged at the time of budget of 2024. The finance minister, while presenting the budget of 24 and 25, stated the purpose. She said the purpose of the new law is to make Income Tax Act concise they have made it, lucid, easy to read and understand. As we go along, we will see as to whether each of these objectives have been achieved or not, because that is the purpose. Now, if you don't achieve your purpose, then what have you done? The new bill will be clear and direct in text, with close to half of the present law in terms of both chapters and words. It will be simple to understand for taxpayers and tax administration, leading to tax certainty and reduced litigation. We will have an occasion to see the changes, and we will decide, each one will decide for yourself as to whether it is going to reduce the litigation or we need more advocates in the country to represent us. CBDT member Mr. Prabhat said Income Tax Act 2025 is written in easy and simple language, steering clear of complicated legal terms. It's meant to be easy for regular folks to understand. Undoubtedly, yes, it does use simple language. But while you are using simple language, the question is that you are unsettling all that was decided in the past. Are you going to take up an argument that, hey, what was decided was in the context of so and so language, now the language is different, therefore the ratio of those decisions does not apply. As long as you do not take up that position, I'm very happy. The law is wonderful, right? There's nothing wrong. But just bring in a section there saying all that you are saying in the press releases, statements, etc. Enact it so that if at all some officer takes a different view, we can always say that look at this overriding provision. It is stated very clearly in no uncertain terms that whatever was there in the past will continue to apply. CBDT's FAQ says the language has been simplified wherever possible without disturbing the meaning. Now we will see whether you have disturbed the meaning or you have not disturbed the meaning. To give a common day-to-day example, we are all aware of section 68 to 69D. The tax, each of these sections uses the expression may. Therefore, it confers a discretion on the assessing officer whether or not he wants to make an addition under these sections. Now, when you go to the corresponding provisions of the 2025 Act, you find that may has been replaced by shall. Now, the minute you replace may by shall, how are you going to say that the intent or the meaning is the same? Earlier, the officer clearly had a discretion, and mind you, when 1961 Act was formulated, the word there was shall. Select committee suggested or recommended that shall should be replaced by may. That may has been subject matter of interpretation by the Supreme Court in Nurjan's case, etc. And now you are once again taking me back from may to shall. This is something which everybody can relate, and therefore I'm taking an example. It's very easy to say I have not changed anything. But let us look at the language and then decide for ourselves whether you have or you have not changed the things. Okay. Then there is a parliamentary select committee was appointed. We are all aware stakeholders' comments were invited, and then they made the recommendation. You have in public domain a report of about 4,584 pages of the parliamentary select committee. What does this committee say? The committee says that the law has simplified the language. Yes, it has. That is easy to read and understand. Consolidating existing law as amended to date in a concise document. Concise document? Yes, it is concise compared to the earlier one. Maintaining continued taxation principles with no major tax policy change or tax rate change. Now, replacement of may with shall, is it not a tax policy change? Is it not something major? Or you feel no, 68 to 69 78% tax ठीक है, may का shall किया तो क्या बड़ी बात, right? And mind you, this may to shall will have several repercussions. Not only that it becomes mandatory, income may get taxed in somebody else's hand. The officer will just say, I'm not concerned. Quite possible that the same addition may survive in the hands of the assessee as also in the hands of some other assessee because of use of the word shall. Because if I don't establish source of source, today the section applies, and therefore the officer assessing me will read shall, he say I'm doing an addition. That man's officer will also read the provision, he will also read shall, and he will also make an addition. If may was there, one of the two could have said, the income has been taxed in one's hands, therefore the same amount need not be taxed in the other hand. Today, even if the officer is convinced, he tell you, sir, tell me, shall dikhne ke baad, where do I not make an addition? I am duty bound to make an addition, and he would be right. We will need some court decision to say that the expression shall here should be understood as may. And again, matter will have to travel to the Supreme Court, and we know, how soon the cases come up. Okay, introducing tax reforms through bringing clarity in the act without any structural or policy changes. Now, are you bringing a tax reform? I do not know. The long settled principle of taxation was not being disturbed. However, latest amendments to be incorporated in the new bill, comparing and learning from global best practices to create a tax statute that balances. Now, when we shifted from 22 Act to 61 Act, there was a Law Commission of India's report, which was chaired by Mr. Palkhiwala. That time also the mandate was make the law simple, right? See the opening sentence. The government has asked us to revise the Income Tax Act. Which act are they revising? 22 say they are coming to 61. That's the mandate. So as to make its provisions more intelligible without affecting its basic tax structure. So was it not the same mandate as it is today? The task is difficult, and Palkhiwala quotes, Codification Committee in England says, please read the sentence 2 times, to expect from us a codification of law of income tax which the layman could easily read and understand was a vain hope which only uninstructed could cherish. So this sentence, which is the sentence picked up from Codification Committee in England, clearly states that it is a virtual impossibility to make income tax law simple, which is easy to understand by a common man. It is perhaps possible to make provisions of Act more logical and clearer without affecting the tax structure, but it is certainly not possible to make the Act simpler without encroaching upon at least the fringe and verge of the tax structure. If a person of the level of Mr. Palkhiwala had to say this, I don't know what further one can add. Okay. Now, as per Law Commission's report, we have made a fairly logical rearrangement and regrouping of the section. Yes, I mean, what was scattered has been brought together undoubtedly. A lot of effort has gone. It is certainly simple, but the question is, does it retain its original character, or because of your desire to cut the words, you have changed the meanings? Each chapter deals with a particular topic, splitting a present. Now, all this is what? This is what was done while shifting from 22 to 61. You will notice that this is what is your mandate, right? Now what have they done? One very good thing is that the concept of previous year and assessment year has been merged into tax year. There is extensive use of tables. While teaching, we used to prepare a table of what are the provisions of section 49. Now they have directly given us a table in the act itself. When you read that table, you don't feel that you are reading the law. You feel you are reading the notes which were taught to you in the classroom. They have shifted detailed provisions to schedules. For example, exempt income is spread over 7 schedules. Removal of redundant provisions, numbers written as numbers and not as word. Today's law, if you pick up, sorry, not today's law, the old act or the 61 act said 30% it would write as in words, whereas now they have just writing it as we write it, 30 and the symbol of percentage. They simplified cross-referencing without using the legal jargon. Key words have been retained. Yes. For example, expenditure incurred wholly and exclusively for the purpose of business. That expression still continues. That's an expression which has been interpreted judicially, and that interpretation will continue. Intricate and detailed provisions have been replaced by straightforward and simple language with short sentences, right? Which is what I told you. Now, these are the new tools which are available. I think all of you are aware that there is a comparative provision of the 61 Act and the 25 Act available on the income tax website. There is a utility to check the Act rules and forms. There are comprehensive FAQs, which is very good. FAQ and guidance notes have been issued for all 190 forms, which they have notified. And there is an AI chatbot by the name Karsathi to assist the contents related to 25 Act. Now, this is, according to me, the most important sentence. In the whole 4,500 pages, this is the most important. What does Parliamentary Select Committee, when it called the Ministry of Finance, the response of the ministry was, so far as 61 Act and 25 Act deal with the same or similar subject matter, they should be interpreted together as a whole. Decisions under 61 Act will also apply to 25. The first sentence is more important. As long as they deal with the same or similar subject matter, they should be interpreted together as a whole. So as we go along, in case we have difficulty in interpreting, we will be justified in falling back upon the interpretation of the corresponding provision of the 1961 law. Of course, subject to the caveat that if the language is clear, the golden rule is interpret the language as is written. Okay. Now you may say, you've spoken so much, we knew. What is the relevance of the Parliamentary Select Committee report? The relevance is this, that Supreme Court in the Constitution Bench decision in the case of Kalpana Mehta has explained the validity of the Parliamentary Select Committee report as follows. It is an external aid for statutory interpretation. It has persuasive value. Mind you, it is persuasive, Supreme Court says. It is not decisive. Right? It has persuasive value to resolve an ambiguity in statutory language. So if there is no ambiguity, Supreme Court will say, I don't want to go to that report. So in your anxiety to make language simple, if you have changed the meaning, though your select committee and your response to the select committee says that the interpretation will be pari materia if the provisions are similar, what happens to this position in law decided by the Constitution Bench way back? The report can be used to evaluate the historical background of law or the nature of the problem that a statute sought to cure. Okay. Now, what we are going to cover? Now begins the real capital gains. This was the background. Now, what we are going to see is two things where changes are made, and number two, where changes are not made but ought to have been made to settle the litigation. Because your objective is that you want to minimize litigation. If you want to minimize litigation, you had a golden opportunity right now. You are changing the full law. You have gone ahead to change may to shall. You've done so many changes. You could have done other changes as well on which there is a controversy day in and day out, and you could have resolved it once and for all so that at least further matters do not go to the courts. Okay. Now, explanations and provisos have been made into subsections. They say we don't want any explanation. We don't want any proviso. No. The rule of interpreting a proviso is different from the rule of interpreting a subsection. How can you say that the principles of interpretation which I applied while reading a proviso, go and apply them to a subsection? If I try to do that, the officer will now say, this is a subsection. Or the revenue will argue before the court, this is a subsection. Now read it as a subsection. It was once upon a time a proviso. Today it is no longer a proviso. Explanation has its own role to play. We all know how do we interpret explanation. Now, do you interpret explanation and a subsection in the same manner? Undoubtedly, no. Now, will the courts going ahead every time refer to a subsection, go to the 1961 Act and see that there it was in the form of an explanation. Therefore, this subsection, I must interpret it as an explanation. Is it how it is going to work? I see major problems coming after a couple of years. But after a couple of years, the revenue officers who come will study only the 25 Act. They're not going to study the 61 Act. 61 Act will become extinct as far as they are concerned, because it is something which is not there in their syllabus. Today's officers, yes, they are aware of the 61 Act. Therefore, they may be able to relate. In fact, they may not be able to relate well with the 25 Act. The difficulty which we practitioners will have is we will be colored by our interpretation or by our understanding of the provisions of the 61 Act, not realizing that the language has undergone a change, and therefore every time a client comes, I need to open the 25 Act now and see what are the changes, and as to whether any of those changes made in the language of 25 Act as compared to the 61 Act affect the interpretation. Okay, now 45(1)(a), something dealing with compensation received on destruction of an asset, has been broken up into 3 subsections. Why? Because they say we don't want proviso. जो proviso है उसको भी separate subsection कर दो. So you will have 45(1)(a) represented by 67(2), 67(3) and 67(4). Right? Now, if you go, it is all logical. 45. Now, if you will go today in 45, how many subsections do you have? 45 5A तक, right? 45 5A तक है आपके पास, 45 1A भी है और 45 5A भी है, तो टोटल मिलके around 7 subsections maybe, right? But today when you go to section 67, you have got 18 subsections. What's happening? Each subsection is broken up further. Just as I told you, 45 1A is broken up into 67 2 to 4. Now, notwithstanding has been replaced by irrespective. I'm sure this has been dealt with in the earlier sessions. Now, can anybody explain me both are the same or both are different? Let us understand the difference as a common man would understand. I mean, let's leave. I mean, how would you explain somebody कि notwithstanding or irrespective में क्या फर्क है? Anybody? We have enough time today. I'll be able to cover comfortably. So let us make it interactive to the extent possible. What is the difference between notwithstanding and irrespective? Are you saying both are the same? Sorry? No, they are not the same. Therefore, wherever they have changed notwithstanding to irrespective, they have changed it throughout the law. In some cases, it may be advantageous. In some cases, it may be disadvantageous. Now, if both are not the same, what is the difference? How do I understand the difference between notwithstanding and irrespective? The other two are not really important, I mean, as per Kia and all that. So all that is not important. The main is notwithstanding and irrespective. Now, what do you mean by notwithstanding and what do you mean by irrespective, and both are same or not? They are saying they have not changed the meaning of that. Therefore, according to them, notwithstanding and irrespective is the same. That is according to them. But is it really the same? He says, no. I agree. It is not the same. Therefore, what is the difference? Today, I take a common example which will explain the position. You have 45(1), which tells you the profits and gains arising on transfer of a capital asset, save as provided in section so and so, so and so, so and so, will be charged to tax in the year of transfer. Correct? So that is 45(1). Then you have 45 5A, which says notwithstanding anything contained in 45(1), where an assessee has entered into a specified agreement, etc., etc. Then what? Then the capital gain will be charged in the year in which completion certificate is issued and full value of consideration will be so and so, right? Now, therefore, you have a classic example of 45(1) being there and 45(5) being non-obstante 45(1). When I say non-obstante, 45(5)A begins with notwithstanding, right? Now, what is the interpretation you understand? Because ये तो common है, 45(5)A इतने वर्षों से चल रहा है अपने साथ. तो मीनिंग क्या है इसका? अभी उन लोगों ने नॉटविथस्टैंडिंग की जगह इरिस्पेक्टिव कर दिया, तो उसका मीनिंग क्या है? Now, notwithstanding would mean that in case there is a conflict between 45(1) and 45(5)A, 45(5)A will prevail, right? I repeat, in case there is a conflict between the earlier provision and the provision having non-obstante clause, the provision having non-obstante clause will prevail. Now, what happens if there is no conflict? Now, 45(1) और 45(5)A में conflict कहाँ आता है? Year of transfer में आता है. 45(1) ने बोला कि capital gain tax to be paid in the year of transfer. 45(5)A says tax to be paid in the year of completion certificate. दोनों contradictory है. That is why 45(5)A had to use the word notwithstanding. कि उसने जो बोला वो जाने दो. If there is a conflict between him and me, you follow me. Right? That is non-obstante. But this is where there is a conflict. Where there is no conflict, then what happens? Like, for example, 45(1) began by save as provided in so and so, so and so. Right? Which means what? But those words save as provided is not there in 45(5). Therefore, if there is no conflict, then what 45(1) says will also stand. What I say will also stand. Am I clear? So notwithstanding means जहां conflict है वहां पे जिसके पास notwithstanding language है वो prevail करेगा. जहां conflict नहीं है वहां दोनों prevail करेंगे. But what is the meaning of irrespective? Irrespective in simple language would mean forget him. उसको जाने दो. Irrespective of what the conveners say, I will finish my talk in 1 hour. Right? So I am not concerned with what he says. Right? Therefore, irrespective means irrespective is something used in colloquial terms. Right? Therefore, irrespective would mean that completely avoid 45(1). Just listen to 45(5). Therefore, what? Therefore, save as so and so का क्या होगा? I mean, some officer will tell me, was earlier you had notwithstanding. इसलिए जो 45(1) में था वो भी रहा और 45(5) में भी रहा. जहां कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है वहां 45(5) को मानेंगे. बट सेव एज या कोई और फ्रेज कोई और सेक्शन में जहां कॉन्फ्लिक्ट नहीं है, व्हाट आर यू गोइंग टू डू? विथ इररिस्पेक्टिव यू आर गोइंग टू इग्नोर. Interesting will be a situation where they have said irrespective of anything contained in any other provision of the act, which means what? Forget the full act, just read only that section, because they are saying irrespective of anything contained in the provision of the act, of this act or whatever, right? Therefore, forget entire act, just read this section. If you read that section on a standalone basis, you are going to forget even the definition section. It is going to give a ridiculous interpretation. We'll have to wait and see as to how courts are looking at this. There was an excellent suggestion by a senior advocate, Mr. Soparkar, at the Chamber of Tax Consultants centenary function, where he said, let them insert a last section, which says, notwithstanding anything contained in this act, wherever the expression irrespective is used, it shall be deemed and shall always be deemed to mean notwithstanding. You wanted irrespective everywhere, you have done it. Now introduce this section so that there is no controversy, because otherwise there is going to be mind-boggling litigation. Let CBDT come out at least with a circular and say irrespective in 2025 Act is to be understood in the same manner as the expression notwithstanding was understood in the 61 Act. Okay. So am I clear on irrespective and notwithstanding? Yes. Now, we have the word irrespective in the 61 Act in section 43B, where the Chandigarh bench, rather special bench of the Chandigarh bench, Chandigarh special bench of the tribunal interpreted the word expression, irrespective. They say, as argued by the counsel appearing for the assessee, the expression irrespective of the previous year dispenses with the concept of previous year. So irrespective of anything contained in the act dispenses with the rest of the act. This is the special bench of the tribunal explaining you irrespective. The expression irrespective means lacking relation, regardless of what is mentioned. That is now what example I gave. Irrespective of what the convener says, I will do this, right? So regardless of what he says, but if it was notwithstanding, then to the extent I am in conflict with him, I will prevail, but otherwise whatever he says will also prevail, whatever I say will also prevail. Okay, now it means the deduction has to be any reference to time, etc. Forget it, right? Now this is just a ready reference navigator. You have it everywhere, nothing great over here. These are the, what I have done is culled out the definitions which are relevant for capital gain chapter and listed them section wise. The order is the 61 Act sections, right? Now these are 6 provisions which you have in 61 Act, but which are not traveling to the 25 Act. Why? Because even in 61 Act, they have become redundant. They are not applicable. Therefore, to reduce the size, these have been eliminated. You could have done this without enacting the new law also. Now, this is your navigator for the capital gain section. You will see 45 became 67. But while reading 67, you also have to keep in mind section 2. Why? Because something which was earlier in 45 now finds place in section 2. I'll give you one example as we go later. So something which was earlier defined in 45 itself now finds a definition in section 2. Therefore, when you read section 67, you will have to read 67 not in isolation, but 67 with some part of section 2 so as to have the same content covered as what your 45 was covering. Okay. 46 has become 68, 46A has become 69. When you come to 47, again, you have to read 70 with 2. Because some definition, something here and there, they have shifted. 47A, 71, 48, 49. Now, you see it is going in logical order, except जहां section निकल गया, obviously your new act is going seriatim. So it is not very difficult to remember the sections also. If you know your present law, you can, and you know which 6 are not there, then you can go serially. Before 54E, so everything is going serially. 54E is the first section which does not have a corresponding provision in the 25 law. Okay, so let's not spend time. Now, there are some loss sections which will also be relevant for capital gains chapter. Now, in those loss sections, they have changed the heading also. So what I have done is the old heading is in black color and the new heading is in red, right? Now let's come to the changes proper. Now we come to the changes proper from the 61 law to the 25 law. Now we are all aware of the definition of demerger under the present law. Now if you see, he has said demerger in relation to companies means transfer pursuant to a scheme of arrangement under section 230 to 232 of the Companies Act 2013. Earlier, 1961 Act did not have a reference of 2013 Act. It had a reference of 391 to 394 of the 56 Act. Correct? तो वहां पे कंपनीज एक्ट 56 का रेफरेंस था, 391 to 394. Therefore, while interpreting that definition, I was required to find out which are the corresponding provisions of the 2013 Act. 391 to 394 of the 56 law, उसका corresponding नया provisions क्या है 2013 Companies Act में? Is it 230 to 232 or is it 230 to 233? What is 233 now? 233 is a fast track merger or demerger. It is a section which provides for fast track merger or demerger. Mind you, if your demerger is in accordance with 230 to 232 of the Companies Act 2013, then it is a tax neutral demerger. Otherwise, as a result of demerger, there will be tax consequences on the company and maybe on the shareholder as well. Why? Because your demerger does not satisfy the definition of demerger in the income tax law. Okay. Now, earlier in 61 law, there was a possibility of my arguing that Sir 233 is an extension or a subset of 230 to 232. And therefore, when you refer to 391 to 394 of the 56 Act, it is the same thing as 230 to 233, not necessarily 230 to 232. I'm not saying it would have been successful or not, but I'm only saying that an argument was possible under the 1961. But when you come to 2025 Act, now they have very clearly said sections 230 to 232 of the 2013 Act, which means 233 तो आएगा ही नहीं. Therefore, what they are telling you is, लॉ मिनिस्ट्री ने, कॉर्पोरेट अफेयर्स मिनिस्ट्री ने जो सेक्शन बनाया उसको हम लोग रिडंडेंट कर रहे हैं. It's a classic case of one ministry making a law, another ministry making it redundant. What are you doing? I mean, today, fast track scheme applies to small companies. You want small companies to go to NCLT, which is already overburdened, and then you say, I want to reduce the burden on the courts and the tribunals. You have holding subsidiary with sister subsidiaries covered by fast track. You have unlisted companies with borrowing of less than 200 crore covered by fast track. Now you want all of them, if they are going through a demerger, to go to NCLT. When Companies Act is amended specifically and takes care of a fast track route, you are saying, no, if you go there, I will not give you a tax benefit. Therefore, what will I do? Per force, I will have to go to NCLT. See, it is not that जो 233 में covered है, वो NCLT नहीं जा सकता. But NCLT में जाना time consuming है. It takes time, and therefore the approvals are delayed. There is cost involved because, I mean, you have to engage lawyers, etc. Anyway, now, will the court accept that 233 is also covered? To my mind, their intention is very clear. Now, in fact, this paragraph in the CA committee is damaging for 61 Act also. Because before the CA committee, the stakeholders said, please make it 230 to 233. The Ministry of Finance declined to accept the recommendation. And what was the reason? They said the inclusion of 233 is a policy change. We are not required to make any policy changes. So when you are asking us to introduce 233 in the definition of demerger, you are asking me to make a policy change that is beyond the scope of the objectives of the 25 Act. Then they said omission of fast track demergers was intentional, not inadvertent. So omission is intentional, not inadvertent. Tax neutrality is intended only for court-approved schemes. And lastly, they say, since fast-track demergers are not court-monitored, valuation thereof can result in tax implication. You provide that if you're going through a fast-track demerger, let registrar give registrar or regional director give a notice to income tax. If you have any issue, you come there and you resolve. But why do you want to say that a fast-track demerger will not qualify, right? I mean, classic case of giving with one hand and taking away with another. Now I come to the next. Slump sale. Now, slump sale. There was a decision of Mumbai Tribunal in Bharat Bijli's case, and that decision was upheld by the Bombay High Court, where it was argued that what is to be taxed is a slump sale, whereas if I get debentures or some other asset, it is a case of slump exchange, and slump exchange is different from a slump sale, right? So at Bharat Bijli, Mumbai Tribunal, confirmed by Bombay High Court, laid down the principle that slump sale is something different and slump exchange is something different. What is sought to be taxed by the income tax law is the slump sale and not a slump exchange. To overrule that decision, they inserted explanation 3. They inserted explanation 3 to the definition of slump sale in 1961 Act in section 2, clause 42, capital C. And what did they say? They said, for the purpose of this clause, transfer shall have the same meaning assigned to it in clause 47. Now, if you remember 47, 247, there transfer includes sale, transfer includes exchange. So therefore, because of this explanation, slump sale and slump exchange became one and the same. But that is for the period after explanation. Period before explanation, Bombay High Court prevails. Correct? Now what have they done in 25 Act? This explanation is not there. Compare the starting lines. They are both same on the left hand side and the right hand side. But your left hand side column was coupled with explanation 3. Today, explanation 3 is not there. Therefore, what are we doing? Reducing litigation, increasing litigation. Are we saying we are going back to Bharat Vidhi position and now onwards, from 1426 onwards, the position of law explained by Bharat Vidhi is revived. Uska punarjanam ho gaya. Is that what we are saying? I mean, yes, if I read the law as it is, without the baggage, right? But the select committee says the committee accepts the ministry's justification that a specific explanation cross-referencing the definition of transfer was removed as a simplification measure. You are removing the explanation. Is that simplification or is that complication? Just because you wanted those 10 words, 12 words out of the law and you wanted to show कि मेरा ये 12 word भी कम हो गया, what are you doing? You are starting a fresh round of litigation. They say this is because comprehensive definition of transfer provided in clause 2109 applies to all provisions, making the separate explanation redundant. So why did you introduce it then? That time also, what is 2109 today is 247 of the 61 Act. Both are same. In 61 law, the court told you, the court did read transfer definition. The court did read the slum sale definition and find the word transfer. But the court understood that I don't have to go to 247 to interpret the word transfer. Do you see left hand side? Second line. Slum sale means the transfer of one or more undertaking. Now what is he saying? कि ये ट्रांसफर डिफाइंड है 247 में, वहां एक्सचेंज भी कवर्ड है, therefore स्लम सेल और स्लम एक्सचेंज एक ही बात हो गया. अरे लेकिन ऐसा था तो भारत बिजली आता ही नहीं था. भारत बिजली आया तो उसके आगे क्या किया तुमने आके लॉ अमेंड किया. therefore तुमको जरूरत लगी लॉ अमेंड करने की. क्यों? क्योंकि द वर्ड ट्रांसफर हियर डज नॉट टेक मी टू 247. नाउ टुडे वी आर टेलिंग यू कि बॉस टू कंटिन्यू, I mean, the same position, because your mandate is do not make any policy change. So bring a provision corresponding to explanation 3. But then they say, no, we have omitted it, not inadvertently, but it is intentional. Now, I do not know whether this increases litigation, decreases litigation. I do not. Now, this is something just wanted to draw your attention. Nothing turns out on this. 45(1) has a reference of 54E, EA, EB. These three sections are redundant. Therefore, there is no need for corresponding section in the 25 law. Correct. Understood. If you come to the left-hand side, 54EC was not there. 54EC was not there. And also 54GA was not there. So left hand side में 3 redundant provisions were inside and 2 relevant provisions were missing. Therefore, those 2 relevant provisions, namely 54EC and 54GA, have now been incorporated in the 25 Act in section 67(1), which corresponds to section 45(1). Am I clear? 54EC, we all know what it is. 54GA is a section which deals with exemption of capital gain on transfer of assets in case of shifting of an industrial undertaking from any urban area to an SEZ. So when an industrial undertaking shifts from any urban area to SEZ, there is a capital gain. to exempt that capital gain, you have section 54 GA. 54 GA was missing in 45(1). So now they have rectified the position, a welcome change. Okay. Now 45(1)A. What is this? Now, why did 45(1)A come? 45(1)A came because of a Supreme Court decision, if I'm not mistaken, in the case of Vania Silks. Now what happens is, if there is a fire, a flood, etc., the asset gets destroyed. The asset gets destroyed, I get money from the insurer if the asset was insured. When I receive money from the insurer, the amount which I received could be greater than cost or WDV depending on my insurance policy. So a question arose as to whether capital gain arose on receipt of compensation from an insurance company as a result of damage or destruction to my asset. Supreme Court in Vania Silks examined the capital gain provision and said, what does capital gain, what is the prerequisite of capital gain? Transfer. Right? Now, what does transfer mean? The asset must exist before and the asset must exist after. That's what Supreme Court said, right? So asset must be there before, asset must be there afterwards. In case of this compensation, does the asset exist in the hands of insurer? No, because the asset is destroyed. At best, what he gets is salvage, right? Therefore, they said, no, this is not, the compensation will not be considered for the purposes of chargeability of capital gains. 10 years after that decision, they amended the law and they brought in 45(1)A. Now, 45(1)A has situations. Now, mind you, if you receive money from the insurer, not for any reason, but you have to receive it only on account of damage or destruction as a result of 1 to 4. 45(1)A में 1 to 4 लिखा है. Now, the same thing they have continued, except that they have put it in a separate subsection. That's okay, right? Nothing turns out on that. Now, my point is that if you run through this list, you find tsunami missing, right? When this section was originally drafted as a result of, to overturn the decision of the Supreme Court, tsunami was something unknown in India. But now we have had tsunamis and we are aware of tsunami. Therefore, should we not have added tsunami also in the list, or do we want one more round of litigation and then we will add it? All that I am saying is that now that you were doing a rethink on the whole law, and tsunami being one of the natural disasters, you could have introduced it, unless you tell me compensation received as a result of tsunami is outside. I'm happy. Can I now argue that you changed the full law? At that time, tsunami was there. Tsunami, India had experienced tsunami, but still you chose not to include tsunami. Therefore, you do not want tsunami to be covered by 67(3). Could be one way. Now, will this reduce litigation? Will this increase litigation? I don't know. Okay.
The conversion of the nature.
So therefore, you need a court to decide. You need a court to decide. Instead of that, after earthquake, could you not have added, put a comma and said tsunami? You are right. That other conversion of nature, fine. But then why not make it explicitly clear? You want to reduce that one word also. If I add that, it counts to the word. Okay, now let's come to the funda was what? Remove provisos. Remove explanation. Right? See, this is what happens when you remove provisos. You have 47(4) today. You have 47(5) today. And then you have a proviso. Proviso applies to 47(4) and 5. I'll explain you what is 47(4) and 5. Proviso says, nothing contained in the clause 4 or 5 shall apply to transfer of capital asset made after 29th February as stock in trade. Correct? Now, what is the concept of this 47.4 and 5? 47.4 says that if a holding company transfers a capital asset to a subsidiary company, if a holding company transfers capital asset to a subsidiary company, then holding company will not pay tax. Holding company will not pay any income tax on that capital gain, which arises as a result of transfer. Later on, when the subsidiary goes and sells it, subsidiary will pay capital gains. But deduction to the subsidiary will be with reference to the original cost of the holding company. Therefore, loss tax का नहीं हो रहा है, because holding से subsidiary जब जाता है, but though technically and legally there is a transfer, in actual effect, profit is moving from one pocket to another, because holding subsidiary का profit ultimately किसका है? Holding का ही है, right? So the asset, instead of sitting in my balance sheet, now is going and sitting in the balance sheet of the subsidiary. Then there was planning made. People said, I am transferring capital asset. The subsidiary will receive it as stock in trade. The subsidiary will receive it as stock in trade. And therefore, when subsidiary sells stock in trade, there is no provision in PGBP parallel to 49 cost to previous owner wala. Therefore, following certain Supreme Court decisions, we computed business income by taking fair market value on the date of receipt. Therefore, there was escapement of tax. Therefore, they had 47 capital A, which said that if within a period of 8 years, either holding subsidiary relationship is lost, or the recipient company converts the capital asset into stock in trade, then there will be a clawback. Okay. Now that 47A stands in that. Now look at the sorry. Okay. Now the proviso told you that if there is a transfer after 29th February as stock in trade, then 47, 4 and 5 will not apply, which means exemption will not apply, and therefore capital gain will be taxable. But when the transfer is as stock in trade. Now look at the right hand side. What have they done? The provisions of 67, which is same as 45, shall not apply to transfer of a capital asset not being stock in trade. When you go to definition of capital asset, what is capital asset? Property of any kind except stock in trade is excluded. So how can capital asset ever be stock in trade? Therefore, this language is going to create transfer capital gain arise. The 67 shall not apply to transfer of a capital asset not be stock in trade. Capital asset can never be stock in trade. What do you want to do? You don't want the proviso. The proviso को आपने इधर merge करने का try किया. And in the result, what have you done? You have messed up the whole thing. You have messed up the whole thing, right? Again, that dealt with 29th February 88. Now you have taken out a reference to that. Therefore, this will apply even to transfers post, etc. Right? Okay. Again, a classic example of redundant provision continuing. This is also section 70, which is your 47. The capital gain. The provisions of 67 shall not apply to transfer of what? A capital asset by a unit holder, being unit or units held by him in consolidating scheme of a mutual fund in consideration of allotment to the unit holder of a unit of a capital asset being unit or units in the consolidated scheme. So if there are various schemes of mutual fund, you are holding units in those schemes of mutual fund which are consolidated. So you receive in lieu of your original units, new units in the consolidated scheme. Now there is technically a transfer. पुरानी स्कीम का यूनिट गया, नई स्कीम का यूनिट आया. अब उसमें मेरा कंट्रोल नहीं था, म्यूचुअल फंड ने डिसाइड किया. आप मेरे से टैक्स मांगोगे तो मैं कहां से दूंगा, right? Therefore you add this provision in section 47, right? Now there was a condition, subject to a condition that consolidation is of two or more schemes of an equity oriented fund or of a fund other than equity oriented fund, which means between 1 and 2 everything is covered. ओल्ड लॉ में था डिफिकल्टी. ओल्ड लॉ में पहले इक्विटी फंड था, फिर दूसरे फंड्स कंसोलिडेट होने लगे, तो उसको भी बेनिफिट देने का था. तो ओल्ड लॉ अमेंड करने के टाइम पे 1 डिलीट करने की जगह उसने 2 ऐड कर दिया था उस जमाने में जब जरूरत पड़ी थी. बट टुडे you don't need all those words which I have typed in red. If you delete all the words in red, you are achieving the same purpose. Am I correct or no? But no, they want to continue the same language. Okay. Now this is something on which there is clarity. This is a welcome change. We are aware of 9B 45(4), right? Who pays tax? The firm pays tax. The firm pays tax, right? Who receives the asset? Partner receives the asset. Gain किसको हुआ? Partner को. Gain किसको हुआ? Partner को हुआ. टैक्स किसने भरा? फर्म ने भरा. ये किसी ने तो टैक्स भरा, किसी ने तो टैक्स भरा ना. तो वहां पे फर्म के हाथ में जो फुल वैल्यू ऑफ कंसिडरेशन लिया आपने, वो 48(3) आज भी बोलता है अलोकेट करो, अलोकेट करो, राइट? Allocate it on the remaining assets, right? Now 72(5), section 72 subsection 5, which corresponds to 48(3), adds the phrase in addition to deductions under subsection 1. Subsection 1 में cost of acquisition, cost of improvement, वो सब के अलावा you will also get. So now therefore because of the change, because of the addition of the words in addition to deductions under subsection 1, there is clarity that the amount charged to capital gain in the hands of the firm when the asset was transferred to the partner will be allowed as a cost in addition to components covered under 1, right? This addition of these few words creates or rather brings in clarity. Now, this is again something which they forgot. 49(2)(ab). Now, what is 49(2)(ab)? Those of you who were practicing earlier will remember that at one point in time we had fringe benefit tax introduced by Mr. Chidambaram. So, during FBT regime, if any ESOP shares were allotted, then the company paid FBT on the value of the shares allotted to employee, right? Value of shares allotted to employee. On which date? On the vesting date. On the vesting date. With the right to recover the cost from the employee, right? Now, when those ESOP shares are sold, when those ESOP shares are sold, 49(2)(ab) said that whatever was the market value on which company paid FPT will be allowed as a cost to the employee when he sells those shares in the market. Logical ना? उसने टैक्स दिया था, मेरे शेयर मिलने पे तो मेरा कॉस्ट हो गया, right? Now, when transitioning from 61 law to 25 law, they have forgotten this. Either they have forgotten or they have assumed that all those ESOP shares allotted between 2007 to 31st March 9, that is during the FPT regime, have already been sold off, which may not necessarily be a case, right? Therefore, you have difficulty. Now, some officer may say, I will not give you that step up. Why? Because 49 2AB is not there in 25 law. 49 2AB is not there in 25 law. Therefore, what? Therefore, I will not give you the step. What is my answer to that? Number one, sir, this is an omission. You have at several places before the select committee said that I don't want to make any policy change. Therefore, if you tell me you are not giving me this, you are making a policy change, right? Alternatively. Now, somebody may tell you, वो सब ठीक है, वो बोला जिसने बोला, right? वो गया. Now, you show me something in the law. Therefore, I will draw attention to section 536, subsection 2, clause B of the 2025 law, which says nothing shall affect the right, privilege, obligation, or liability acquired, accrued, or incurred under the repealed act or orders under such repealed act. Therefore, getting a step up of cost was a right which I acquired under the repealed act. 536(2) clause B is saving that right of mine. Therefore, whether 49 2AB का corresponding provision है या नहीं है, you please give it to me. Am I clear? Clear? Yeah. Okay, fine. Chalo. Things are easy. They're not really difficult. Okay. This presentation is troubling. Can you call somebody? It's stuck. How much time do I have? I have time. Up to what time? 10:45. 10:45. Okay. Now, section 50. Notwithstanding anything contained in 242A. उसकी जगह राइट साइड में irrespective of anything contained in 2101. Irrespective, notwithstanding, same, मान के चलो. Right? Let us assume दोनों से. Therefore, no change. Correct? This is very important ना, because I'll have changes in 54 EC, etc., which have significant effect. Is this very clear? कोई change किया उसने? नहीं किया. The provisions of sections 48 and 49 shall be subject to following modification. उधर वो बोलता है provisions of 72 and 73. They are corresponding numbers of 48 and 49. Therefore, net, is there any change between section 50 and subsection, section 74 bracket 1? The answer is no. Okay. Now you see, what is he doing? There are two situations, subsection 2 and subsection 3 in 74. 74(2) deals with a situation where the block continues, but the value becomes negative. Block continues, but the sale price of the asset sold is greater than expenditure incurred in connection with transfer, actual cost of new assets acquired during the year, and opening WTB. Right? See, block section 50 का trigger होता है. One of the two situations. Situation number 1. The block continues, but full value of consideration is greater than those three items, right? Which means block negative हो गया. Block का value negative हुआ, block negative नहीं हुआ. Second situation, block में जितने asset थे वो सारे बिक गए. Value है या नहीं है, I'm not concerned. Right? So subsection 2 is dealing with a situation where block continues and section 50 applies. Subsection 3 dealing with a situation where the block ceases to exist. Now, left hand side, the language was WDV of the block of assets at the beginning of the year. Now, beginning को start करने का उसको. Now, what difference does it make? Is there a difference between start and beginning? Shorten the word, okay. Then in the next, why don't you do it? Therefore, I will now argue start is something else, beginning is something else. And I will have answer to that. So if need be, I will argue कि sir, you have made a conscious change. आपने एक जगह beginning को start किया, लेकिन दूसरी जगह नहीं किया. See, everywhere, wherever it was 1, 2, 3, they made it ABC. 49 में 1, 2, 3, 4 चल रहा था, उसको उसने ABC किया. यहाँ पे भी 1, 2, 3 चल रहा था, ABC किया. जहां ABC चल रहा था 61 एक्ट में, वहां पे इसने आके 1, 2, 3 किया. You catch one thing, na? You say throughout the law I will follow one, but no, whatever 61 did, I will do ulta of that. Why? Because I have to show that I have changed. I have changed. So I have simplified. So 1, 2, 3 in 49 was difficult to remember. ABC is easier to remember. Okay. So am I clear on this? Therefore, what am I trying to demonstrate? Net, there is no change in section 74, which corresponds to section 50. We very clear on that? Very clear? So now let's come to 50C. We'll come to this a few minutes later. Let's finish 50C. Now 50C we are all aware. 50C applied only to a case where stamp duty value was determined by authority of state government. So if there was an authority of central government which determined stamp duty value, 50C did not apply. 50C did not apply. Whereas 56(2)(10) applied whether stamp duty value was determined by authority of state government or by central government. So to that extent, there was an inconsistency in the 61 Act. Okay. Now what could you have done? Two options. Either central को भी डाल दो, right? 50C में central को भी add कर दो, या 56(2)(10) से central को निकाल दो, right? तभी दोनों पैरीमेटीरिया होगा. So obviously choice was very obvious. क्या करने का? Either central को add कर दो, right? Now, but you have done it by putting a definition of the expression stamp duty value in section 2. That is why in my opening navigator slide against 78, I said read with section 2. Because अभी आपको 2105 में जाके ये definition भी देखना पड़ेगा. Am I clear? Now, if you see, stamp duty value means value adopted or assessed or assessable by any authority of central government or state government. In the 61 law, it was value adopted or assessed or assessable by any authority of state government. So state or center दोनों ऐड कर दिया अभी, because he used the word stamp duty value, and stamp duty value का definition आगे उसने कर दिया. So throughout the law you will have this definition which will apply. Now the word assessable is used here. It was earlier defined in section 50C. If you see 50C, it had the explanation 2 which defined the expression assessable. Right? It said, for the purpose of this section, I am reading section 50C of the 1961 law. Expression assessable means the price which the stamp valuation authority would have, notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in any law for the time being in force, adopted or assessed if it were referred to such authority for the purpose of payment of stamp duty. This was the definition of assessable, where in explanation 2 to section 50C. Now what he has done, stamp duty value का definition है उसका. If you see up to property, it is the text of 50C which is brought in the definition. With one change कि यहाँ central government भी आ गया. 50C में central government नहीं था. Rest everything is the same up to the word property. Where onwards is the definition of assessable. Therefore, he has merged the definition of assessable into definition of stamp duty value in section 2, subsection 105. अभी उसमें क्या change किया उसने? So from where onwards मैंने यहाँ रखा compare. If you see the green portion on the left hand side, It has word not, it begins with notwithstanding. Obviously notwithstanding को irrespective किया, लेकिन उसको end में लेके आया, right? And the blue part which was in the end has come in the front. Other than that, nothing. Does any meaning change? Does anything turn around on that? To my mind, no. I mean, you have only rearranged the language. Notwithstanding ko, you have made it irrespective. Now, irrespective of what? Irrespective of anything to the contrary contained in any other law in force, right? Left hand side mein, it was law in force for the time being. Now, therefore, somebody will argue, even if the law is not in force, I will follow. Because left hand side, you add any other law for the time being in force, those words you have removed. Am I clear? Other than that, nothing significant. Okay, now tell me something. This is nothing to do with your changes, but I'll just, if you look at 50C ka revised version, it is simple. If the consideration received or accruing from transfer of a capital asset being land or building or both is less than stamp duty value. So what is he saying? Compare kar. Kya compare kar? Consideration with the stamp duty value. If you find consideration is less than the stamp duty value, then what? For the purpose of section 72, 72 ka equivalent 48 apply. For the purpose of 72, stamp duty value shall be deemed to be full value of consideration received or accruing as a result of transfer, subject to the following. Now, what is the following? Stamp duty value on the date of agreement may be taken, and if the stamp duty, now look at B, that is interesting. If the stamp duty value does not exceed 110% of consideration received or accruing, such consideration shall be deemed to be full value of consideration. अरे वो तो actual है. Where is the question of deem? See, you have 100 rupees and you have stamp duty value of 108. 108 is less than 110% of 100. So what do you want to say? ऐसा situation होएगा तो compute with reference to 100. But what are you saying? Such consideration which is 100, such consideration which is 100 shall be deemed. Deemed means what? That is a hakikat. I mean, that is not imaginary. Deemed means what? Something which is not real, you are imagining. You are treating it. Now, 100 is my real consideration. Where is the question of deeming? Now, this will may have impact somewhere else. Right now, I'm not dealing because it's not, I mean, we're not here to deal with the other issues. Okay. Now, next question comes. Ye dekho, 78. Without prejudice to the provisions of subsection 1, which we saw, the AO may refer the valuation of the capital asset to a valuation officer, and provisions of so and so shall with necessary modifications apply in relation to asset where assessee claims that the stamp duty value is more than the fair market value, etc. Now you will make a reference, fine. So what? What next? Nothing. Section gets over. See, this is the difficulty of merging your provisos, explanations, etc. What are you telling me? He may, if he satisfies these two conditions. Kiya reference. Fir kya wo nahi malum, right? Now, then he says, if the value determined by valuation officer on a reference made under subsection 2 exceeds the stamp duty value, such stamp duty value shall be taken. Therefore, what he is telling you is, आपका consideration 100. आपका consideration 100. Stamp duty value 115. You make a claim before the AO that sir, stamp duty value is more than market value, number one. And you have not filed any appeal. Therefore, AO will make a reference to the valuation officer. Valuation officer will value that asset. क्या करेगा वो? Either 115 बोलेगा, या 115 से ज्यादा बोलेगा, या 115 से कम बोलेगा. तीन ही ऑप्शन है ना. वैल्यूएशन ऑफिसर क्या करेगा? रेफरेंस पे आपका स्टैंप ड्यूटी वैल्यू 115 का है, वो 115 को 115 बोलेगा, नहीं तो उससे ज्यादा बोलेगा, नहीं तो उससे कम बोलेगा. सेम बोला तो कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता, उसको स्टैंप ड्यूटी वैल्यू का नाम दो कि डीबीओ का वैल्यू का नाम दो, आंसर इज वन एंड द सेम. If he says it is 125, then subsection 3 tells you 115 लेने का. Subsection 3 tells you 115 लेने का. But if he says 108 लेने का, if the DVO says 108, then what happens? Then what happens? 108 लेने का, right? Then 108 लेने का. ऐसा लिखा किधर? ऐसा कि दिखा किधर उसने? नहीं दिखा, नहीं दिखा ना, राइट? डोंट वरी, वो भूल नहीं गया. 61 में नहीं था इसलिए उसने नहीं लिखा. हिज मैंडेट इज 61. वो मेरा बेस है, जो भी मैं करता हूं उसके स्टैंडर्ड से कंपेयर करो. उसने गलती किया ना तो मैं भी गलती करूंगा. So in an examination hall, when I'm copying, if that person made a mistake, I will also make a mistake. So what? Right? That's not my mistake. उसने गलत दिखा था, मैं तो उधर से खाली कॉपी किया था. Right? So therefore, now we are coming back to what? 108. Are you clear on the example or no? Now tell me, computation के लिए क्या लोगे? 100 के 108?
10% का point भी होगा.
Computation के लिए 100 लोगे के 108? Sorry? 108. किसी और ने 109, किसी और का स्टैंप ड्यूटी वैल्यू 109 था, उसका आपने 100 लिया. इस आदमी का 108 आ रहा है तो वहां 108 लोगे. Okay. He is interpreting the law as it is written. He is saying मैं इधर उधर का नॉलेज नहीं लाऊंगा, मैं तो ऐसे ही जाऊंगा. क्या लिखा है वो पढ़. Right? Now what is he telling me? If the stamp duty value does not exceed 110%, it is not DBO value. He is saying read stamp duty value as something different, DBO value as something different, is what he is saying, which is correct on the literal interpretation, but it is leading to absurd result. But it is leading to absurd result. Why? Because as I said, somebody who transfers an identical asset, in his case, if stamp duty value is 109, you are going to compute capital gain with reference to 100. And here you have a person whose value, now we have arrived at 108. You are saying, I will take it as 108. You have decisions of several benches of the tribunal saying that this 10% variation, I mean, what do you call it? Safe harbor, apply it not only to stamp duty value, but also to DBO value. This is not a result of change. The existing law may be है, but am I clear on this? You have enough decisions to say logical भी है. For the reason, one example I gave you, 109 वाले का आप 100 लोगे. Second, law क्या कर रहा है? DBO की वैल्यू जाके स्टैंप ड्यूटी वैल्यू की जगह पे सब्स्टिट्यूट कर रहा है. एक्सेप्ट जहां डीबीओ ज्यादा बोलेगा वो बोलता है मैं ज्यादा नहीं दूंगा. राइट? Therefore, what is the intention? That if there is an aberration in the stamp duty value, DBO will correct it. What is the point if you correct it but don't give me the benefit? Right? If you are correcting it, then give me the benefit. Right? Therefore, he has corrected it. Once he corrects it, the DBO value will be equivalent to stamp duty value, at least for the purpose of clause B, if not anything else. Okay. So now next what this we did. Now see, this is also interesting. Nothing wrong. Again, copy paste. Right? What was there in 54B, I brought it as 83. Now what is it says? That when an individual or HUF has capital gain arising on transfer of a agricultural land which was used by either the assessee or by his parent in the past 2 years for agricultural purposes, then capital gain will be subject to, rather capital gain will not be charged to tax if the assessee has invested in purchase in purchase of another asset, new asset, right? And what is the new asset? Purchased any other land for being used for agricultural purpose, right? Therefore what? There is a gain arising on transfer of a land which was used for agricultural purpose either by me or by my parent. Now, which agricultural land can this be? This has to be only urban agricultural land, because rural agricultural land transfer किया तो gain आता ही नहीं है, because that is not a capital asset. Therefore, gain किसका देख रहे हो? Gain किसका देख रहे हो? अर्बन का. करेक्ट. इन्वेस्टमेंट कहां चाहिए तुमको? इन्वेस्टमेंट कहां चाहिए? Any agricultural land. Therefore, I have 10,000 ka land which I sold for 50 crore to a builder, because this was urban agricultural land. The gain became how much? 49 crores or whatever, 49 crore, 99 lakh, 90,000 or whatever it was, right? Now I go and purchase what? Any agricultural land, which means I will go and purchase rural agricultural land. I will go and purchase rural. After 1 month, I will sell that rural agricultural land. Tax or no tax? No tax. Is that your intention? Is that your intention? Well, you are saying you must not sell that land for 3 years. Arey not sell kiya to karega kya? Okay. Now what is the mistake they have done? Has within 2 years purchased any other land for being used for agricultural purposes. He should have said any other capital asset being land used for capital. Then he would have eliminated rural, because rural would not qualify as a capital asset. और दो word नहीं डाला है. This is the consequence. Am I clear on what I am saying? The entire capital gain can become tax free, and I will be able to monetize the new asset. The cost involved will be stamp duty. I mean, वो भरना पड़ेगा, खरीदना पड़ेगा, उतना stamp duty जाएगा आपका, right? Am I clear? Okay, nothing more. I mean, this is copy. हाँ? क्या? घार कैसे आएगा? इसमें क्या जाना? Okay, I mean, okay, fine. That's then maybe can't say possible. They say what was the commercial purpose of buying rural agricultural? Unless you say कि मैंने खरीदा फिर मालूम पड़ा कि तो वास्तु खराब है, मेरे घर में डेथ हो जाएगा, तो ऐसे बेच दिया. So take a report after you purchase. This is what. I mean, something which occurs to you later. So at that point in time, that was not there. Later, I became wiser, and therefore I disposed it of. Whatever. Anyway, now 54 EC. Now this is the controversy. Section 50 देखा था ना अपने. Corresponding कोई change नहीं था. Whatever that number was, right? There was no change in corresponding provision of section 50 under the 2025 Act. Now look at 54 EC. Now before I come here, let us understand that there is a Supreme Court decision in the case of VS Delhi. What does Supreme Court say? The question arose as to whether when I transfer a capital asset forming part of block of assets and there is a section 50 gain, that section 50 gain is deemed to be short-term capital gain, right? Can I invest in 54 EC bond and then say that that section 50 gain is exempt? That section 50 gain is exempt as a result of investment in 54 EC का bond, correct? Now 54 EC का wording देखो. Where capital gain arises from transfer of a long-term capital asset. Supreme Court said you are deeming the gain to be short-term, the asset still remains long-term. The asset still remains long-term. You are deeming the gain to be short-term, right? And look at your language of 50. It says notwithstanding anything in 242A. So you are overriding 242A. Then you are saying the provisions of 48 and 49 shall be subject to following modification. So you are modifying only 48 and 49. You are not modifying the rest of the law. So now they don't like that decision. VS Tempo, right? Therefore, they say we are making a change. What are you doing now? Section 85, which is corresponding provision of section 54 EC. Now they are using the word long-term capital gain. अभी जब आप इधर आओगे क्लेम करने को तो बोलेगा आपका गेन शॉर्ट टर्म है. वो आपको क्या बोलेगा अभी? आपका गेन शॉर्ट टर्म है, therefore 54 EC नहीं दूंगा. That is the intention. Is that achieved? Is that achieved? Is that achieved? Yes or no? No. Why not? Why? What is wrong?
Asset remains long-term.
Sorry?
Asset remains long-term by virtue of holding.
Correct, sir. But in the new language, forget the left-hand side now. आपका left-hand side वाला argument गया. VS Tempo, according to them गया. I'm not saying that. Right? Same position arose as a result of SKF special bench. Earlier Smita conductors. The gain will be short term, but the rate mentioned in 112 will apply. The gain is short term under old law की बात कर रहा हूं. Old law is 2061 law, right? But the rate will apply, which is mentioned in section 112. Okay, which is concessional. Why? Because there also the word is long-term capital asset. Okay, so concept is what? Section 50 is changing the nature of the gain, but not changing the nature of the asset. Okay, now he is using the word long-term capital gain, right? So this is one change he has made with the intention that he is curtailing VS Tempo. I'll come back to it in 2 minutes, right? Just let me finish 54 EC again. Now 54 EC bonds. I can invest how much? Sorry? 50 lakh. Okay. 50 lakh in 1 year or more than 1 year? अक्टूबर में एसेट बेचा तो दिसंबर 1 जनवरी को एसेट बेचा तो ये ईयर में 50, नेक्स्ट ईयर में 50, 1 करोड़ ले लूं? 1 करोड़ ले लूं क्या? नहीं. टोटल 50. Total with reference to what? Total with reference to what? Capital gain arising. Look at the red words on the right hand side. Capital gain arising on transfer of one or more capital asset. Therefore, if I sell one asset, I have a gain of 40. I sell another asset, I have a gain of 50. Can entire 90 go into the bonds? No. Why not? Why not? अरे first में 40 है as compared to your limit of 50. So I'm investing 40. Second में 50 का gain है. I'm investing 50. What action? Answer is because one or more original asset. The limit applies to gain arising on one or more original asset. I don't know why anybody will go and invest in bonds, because it is not a financially prudent decision to go and invest in bonds. I would rather pay 15% tax today, 12.5 is surcharge, rest 85, go and invest somewhere else. I will earn much better. But I mean, we have that mindset, tax nahi bharne ka, right? So tax nahi bharne ka, bharo, right? Okay, fine. Now, let me come to 54F. Now, 54F is a deduction. 54F is a deduction in respect of long-term capital gain arising on transfer of any capital asset not being a residential house, provided I go and buy a new residential house. Okay. So that is 54F1, which is your 86 corresponding. Now 86(1) and 54F1 are same. Quick change, that is why I have not given you. But look at 86(5). There's nothing wrong here. Huh? All this is there in 61 law also, but I want to point out something, therefore I am taken it up. I mean, these are small things they should have corrected. Now, the provisions of subsection 1 shall not apply. When? If the assessee owns more than one, malum hai, purchases any residential house other than new asset within 1 year, or constructs a new house, constructs any house other than new asset within 3 years. Therefore, kya? If I purchase within 1 year, if I purchase within 1 year from the date of transfer of jewelry or shares, right? Another house other than the house for which I am claiming 54F. Then he is saying 54F nahi milega tere ko 54F1 does not apply. Lekin when will I know this? I will know this only after expiry of 1 year or after expiry of 3 years. Correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
अरे when you are filing your return, 1 बरस हो गया होता है क्या? नहीं, 3 बरस तो certainly नहीं हुआ होता है. Therefore, how is this section going to work? How is this section going to operate? Look at next 6. If the assessee purchases within 2 years after the date of transfer, यहाँ 1 year, यहाँ आके 2 years हो गया. Okay. If the assessee purchases within 2 years after the date of transfer of original asset or constructs within 3 years after the date any residential house, income from which is chargeable under the head IFHP other than the new asset, the capital gains not charged under 67 shall be charged as LTCG of the year in which the new house is purchased. Therefore, 5 is a disqualification. 6 is a consequence. 5 is a disqualification. 6 is a consequence. Which will prevail? 5 or 6? Supposing I sell jewelry on 1st January 2026. 1st January 2026. Then I purchase a new house. I am required to purchase new house within 2 years or construct within 3 years. Clear hai? Itna to clear hai? Right? Therefore, up to 28, I can buy a new house, or up to 29, I can construct. वो capital gain account को बाद में देखेंगे, right? इतना तो clear हो गया. Now, what is SPY telling me? That if you buy something else, right? So 2026, 1st January, I sold my jewelry. I purchased new house on 1st July. I'm within time. Now I buy one more house. I buy one more house when, let us say, 1st January 27. 1st January, 1st November 27, right? I buy a new house in 1st November 27. Have I violated fine?
Yes.
Have I violated fine? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. But where is the consequence? Where is the consequence? Will some officer tell me that, wait, you violated 86(5). 86(5) says 54F1 will not apply. Therefore, I am going back and I am changing your computation. Will some officer say this? Or will I tell him that, wait, sir, 86(5) is only a disqualification. 86(6) is a consequence. Consequence will arise in the year of purchase of the second house or construction, provided purchase is after, purchase is within 2 years, right? Which is my case, yes, right? Now, therefore, in my example, I've taken November. If you take a period between 12 and 24 months, you'll get a different answer. Right? For simplicity, I took November to explain the point. Now, this is a mistake. This is clearly a drafting mistake. Nothing turns out on this. Why do I say this is a drafting mistake? When I was a student in BCom, these 2 years and 3 years which you are reading, it was 1 and 2. It was 1 and 2. Then they amended the law and they made it 2 and 3. जब 2 and 3 किया, तब सबसेक्शन 5 की जगह पे 3 किया कंस्ट्रक्शन को, 2 था उसको 3 किया, लेकिन वो 1 को 2 करने को भूल गया. वो भूल गया उस जमाने में, वो आज तक चल रहा है. यहां आके भी उसने रेक्टिफाई नहीं किया. Somebody can be in serious difficulty because of this, and mind you, the impact could be tremendous. And this is pure simple drafting error. You go to that date when 1 and 2 became 2 and 3, the corresponding change happened at one place, did not happen at purchase ka place. This is the effect of that. Okay, so now this is something where some officer troubled somebody and he had to come for advice. Nothing in the point, but just understand. Column B में क्या है इसका? This is 49(1). I mean cost to the previous owner वाला concept. So left hand side में situations है in which you acquire the asset. Right hand side में क्या बोलता हूँ? The cost of acquisition will be cost for which previous owner of the property acquired it. Previous owner of the property acquired it as increased by cost of improvement incurred and borne by the previous owner of the assets. Therefore, I have A who died and asset came to B. What will be the cost of acquisition? Cost to A plus cost of improvement to A. Cost of improvement to A plus cost of improvement of B. Total of all the three is my cost of acquisition. समझ में आ गया? A expired, B के हाथ में एसेट आया, B के लिए कॉस्ट क्या? A का कॉस्ट प्लस A का इंप्रूवमेंट प्लस क्या? B का इंप्रूवमेंट. ये तीनों मिला के क्या हो गया? कॉस्ट ऑफ एक्विजिशन. तो मैंने एसेट को इंप्रूव किया, बट बाय फिक्शन दे आर सेइंग इट इज कॉस्ट ऑफ एक्विजिशन. ओके, चलो. अभी वो टेबल के नीचे ना एक डेफिनेशन दिया है उसने. This is all a table that our entire 49 is in table form, which I said is very easy, lovely, right? You feel okay, these are notes of my college. Okay. Now, it says, for the purpose of the table in subsection 1, in respect of entry against serial number 1, previous owner of the property. Please pay attention. Previous owner of the property for any capital asset owned by the assessee means plus previous owner of the capital asset who acquired it by a mode of acquisition other than that referred in column B. सीधी भाषा में क्या बोल रहा है? सीधी भाषा में वो बोल रहा है कि if there are multiple transfers, go back to the first person who actually purchased it by a mode other than 49. Okay, so A died, leaving behind the asset for B. B gifted it to C. B gifted it to C. Now C is selling it. Right? Who's the previous owner of the property? Sorry? A. Previous owner of the property according to his definition is A. B is not previous owner of the property. Now think. A ने परचेस किया, A ने इंप्रूवमेंट किया होगा, A मर गया, B के हाथ में आ गया, B ने इंप्रूवमेंट किया होगा, राइट? B ने एसेट C को दिया, C ने भी इंप्रूवमेंट किया होगा, करेक्ट? जब C एसेट बेचेगा तब यू नीड डिडक्शन ऑफ ऑल दीज आइटम्स. यस और नो? A का कॉस्ट, A का इंप्रूवमेंट, B का इंप्रूवमेंट, C का इंप्रूवमेंट, ये सबका डिडक्शन चाहिए ना मेरे को, राइट? नाउ लेट अस सी व्हाट इज हैपनिंग. Now you have this. Section 90 है, classic. Now some you actually troubled, somebody had to come for advice. Now he says, meaning of adjusted cost of improvement, adjusted meaning of cost of improvement, cost of acquisition. So in relation to intangible asset, I'm not concerned. In relation to any other capital asset, if it was acquired, if it was acquired before 1/4/2001 or an expenditure incurred on or after date in addition, in making addition or alteration. Then in clause 2 is saying in any other case means all expenditure of a capital nature incurred in making addition or alteration by the SSC, after it became property of the SSC by any modes specified in 73 by the previous owner. Now the AO said that whatever is improvement cost incurred by B, I will not give. The AO in that case said A died leaving the asset to B, B gifted it to C. When C sold, in the computation, the officer said, I will give you A ka cost. I will give you A ka improvement. I will give you C ka improvement, but I will not give you B ka. Why? Because AO said, read the word previous owner of the property. Previous owner of the property is not B. It is only A. Okay. Therefore, B ने जो deduction, incur किया वो गया. Now, is that the case? Ingenious thinking by officers. Fantastic. Right? The answer is no. There are two expressions: previous owner of the property and only previous owner. B is the previous owner, but A is previous owner of the property. What is defined is previous owner of the property, not previous owner. So you cannot tell me that the deduction for improvement carried out by B will not be given. I discussed this because it was a real life case. Okay, now we are coming back to our VS tempo, hopefully last or second last issue. I have 8 minutes. Okay. Now, look at 54 EC. I told you that the language has been changed. We saw this change, no? Okay. Capital gain arises from transfer of a long-term capital asset is the language used in 54 and 54 EC. Whereas when you come to the amended provisions, they are using the expression long-term capital gain. Therefore, only suggesting that what will qualify is long-term capital gain. So if you bring short-term capital gain here, we will not give you a deduction. Is the intention, not the result. Okay. Now, have they achieved it? To my mind, no. Why? Because what the term long-term capital gain has been defined. What is long-term capital gain? Definition of long-term capital gain: gain arising on transfer of a long-term capital asset. So when law is using capital gain, long-term capital gain over here, I will say gain arising on transfer of a long-term capital asset. That is the definition, no? So A is equal to B. So B लिखो या A लिखो, answer is one and the same. Definition का meaning ही वो होता है, right? So I will pick up that definition from section 2, substitute it over here and read it. When I substitute it, you are again coming to long-term capital asset. My nature of asset is not changing. We saw that section 50 language is not changed except for notwithstanding to irrespective, right? Therefore, I say that though their intention appears to be to change it, to stop it, they have not been successful because they have used the expression long-term capital gain, which is a defined expression. And once I substitute the definition in place of the expression long-term capital gain, I come back to the same, same conclusion, which VS tempo holds, right? Therefore, not. But look at what they are saying. People said, why are you changing the language? Let it continue the same. And Ministry of Finance tells the Select Committee, the current clause as drafted in the bill is clearer and unambiguous in meaning. The deduction is intended only for long-term capital gains and not for assets that are long. And not for assets that are long-term. उसका intention है not to give you 54 EC. But to my mind, not to section 50 and said, notwithstanding anything in 242 hai ki jagah, notwithstanding anything contained anywhere in the, then possibly you could have done it. Now you have said irrespective of anything in 2 so and so, then you should have said irrespective of anything contained anywhere. Okay. Fine. So this is now that same rationale. Okay. Now let me deal with this. Now again, there is some confusion. I don't know why. That under the present law, even after 23rd July 24, if capital gain arises, indexation is available. It is not a correct reading, according to me. Capital gain has to be computed without indexation if it arises after 23rd July 24. When you go to 112 and you compute your tax liability, 112 proviso to 112 tells you that if the tax which you have computed is more than the tax which you would have computed by applying the 20% rate and taking indexation benefit, they are using a better language. They are saying in accordance with the provisions of this act as they stood before the amendment of 23rd July 24. Then the excess shall be reduced. Therefore, वो खाली आपको टैक्स कंप्यूट करने के टाइम पे कंसेशन देता है. It is not that indexation available है, मेरे को चॉइस है. It is there's no choice. आप कैपिटल गेन रिटर्न के लिए कंप्यूट करोगे in accordance with the new provision. New provision is without indexation. But when you come to 112 to compute your rate of tax, I mean your amount of tax to be paid, you will compute 12.5 plus surcharge ka figure. Compare that with the earlier regime, provided you are an individual HUF, provided you are a resident, provided the capital gain arises from transfer of an immovable property, and provided that property was acquired before 23rd July 24. I mean, if all these conditions are satisfied, you compute another figure. If that second figure is less than the first figure, the difference between the two is to be given to you as a deduction. Your original 112 ka liability नीचे जाएगा, which means you will come to the lower figure. Okay, am I clear? Okay, now, sorry, no. Okay, now look at 197.3. He's saying in case of an individual or HUF, 197 is a corresponding provision of 112. 197.3 says, in case of an individual or HUF being a resident, in case transfer of a LT long-term capital asset being land or building, which was acquired before 23rd July 24. Okay. Now, back to my example A to B. A died, leaving behind B. A died on 1st January 25. Therefore, B got the asset when? B got the asset when? When? On 1st January 25. Because तब तक तो A था जिंदा. Asset A का था. So whenever I acquired the asset, 1/1/25. Therefore, will this work or will this not work? Am I clear on the question?
Yeah.
Am I clear on the question? A died on 1/1/25. He was holding the asset for last 40 years or whatever. B gets it on death of A on 1/1/25. Is it correct to say that B has acquired it on 1/1/25, which is after 23rd July 24, and therefore no benefit will be given? No, no, no. Why? No benefit given, so no, no, no. Tab tak there was no answer.
Was acquired earlier.
Sorry?
Was acquired earlier.
What is the basis of saying that?
Date of acquisition of previous order.
Sorry?
The date of acquisition has to be considered of previous order.
Therefore, you are saying harmonious interpretation. Therefore, you are saying Manjula Shah. Right? Now, if you want to give a legal answer, you will say, which was acquired by the SSC नहीं लिखा है. Purpose था उसके पीछे. The asset was acquired. He has not said was acquired by the SSC. When you go to the indexation thing, it says where the first year in which the asset was held by the SSC. Right? In spite of that language, you have decision of Manjula Shah. Therefore, here it is totally futile to say, okay, no, you have acquired it post 23rd July 24, and therefore I'm not going to give you a benefit. All that I'm saying is that such small aberrations, which majority of the people face in day-to-day practice, it was better that you could have corrected that. You knew this. You know Manjula Shah exists. You also know that you have not filed a review petition against Manjula Shah. You have not amended the law, which means effectively you have accepted the decision. If you have accepted the decision, why not gracefully change the law and save at least future litigation? We already have enough of litigation in this country. Am I clear on this? Right? I think with this, I have dealt with whatever changes I wanted to point out. There could be many more, and I have not dealt with the issues arising from the language, because our focus was, or my mandate was, compare 61 to 25 and tell us what are the changes. So these are the changes, but I did cover some of the misses. That means there was no change, but there should have been a change, which is what I have pointed out. Thank you. If there are any questions, I will.
Any one of our questions can be taken, I mean, if sirs allow.
Yeah, I want one.
In case of redevelopment of a property, section 45(5)(a), whether the date of acquisition to the redeveloped property would be the original date, and whether the cost of acquisition would be on the date of receiving the commencement certificate. I want to have a clarification on this.
If your question is not with reference to the new law, your question is with reference to 45(5)(a), the existing law. Right? So the question, as I have understood, is we cannot hear. Oh, okay, sir.
Yes, audible. Closer to mouth. Closer to mouth is audible. Yes.
Yeah. The question is that you have entered into a specified agreement. All the prerequisites of 45(5)(a) are satisfied. You have received a new house.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Your question is twofold. Number one, what is the date of acquisition for the new house?
Yes.
Number one.
Yeah.
And number two, what is its cost of acquisition?
Yeah.
If you go,
Right.
if you go and sell the new asset,
Yes.
what is it that you will be able to claim it as a deduction?
Yes.
What cost? Is that the question?
Yes, and they provided that 2 years of period, holding period from the date of commencement certificate is also completed.
What?
What years? 2 years from the date of commencement certificate.
Why is commencement certificate?
New estate. OC.
I've not understood that part. OC or?
Yeah, for the new estate.
So he is saying, I'm paraphrasing the question for clarity. There is an individual who has entered into a specified agreement. All the prerequisites of 45(5)(a) are satisfied. In any specified agreement registered, it's an area sharing, etc., etc. He says that he has received completion certificate, right? After receiving completion certificate, he has held the asset for 2 years, right? And now he's selling. So he's giving me 3 pieces of information. 45(5)(a) applies. He has received a new asset. Having received it, he has held it for more than 2 years, and he now wants to know how to compute short term or long term. The holding period, to my mind, will be computed, as you said, with reference to the completion period. However, possible for you to argue, relying on Bombay High Court decision in Vebu Vaidyanathan, that the holding period is the date of the specified agreement, because it is under that agreement that the right to receive the flat arose. That agreement is akin to an allotment letter. Bombay High Court in Vebu Vaidyanathan says that count the holding period from allotment. As far as your second question is concerned, so in your case, there is no difficulty because you have waited for 24 months even after OC. But I'm saying if you would have sold it within 3 months from OC, then if you wanted long term, you could have argued that, sir, please go by Bombay High Court decision in Vebu Vaidyanathan, SLP against which is dismissed, right? Therefore, that at least to be in Bombay is the binding decision. Go to the development agreement or PAAA, whatever that you call it, which gives me a right to that particular flat. Coming to the cost, there is a specific amendment in 49, which says that the full value of consideration which you have adopted for computing gains under 45(5)(a), along with monetary consideration, will become your cost of acquisition. Right? So that answers both of those.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes,
I have no issues. The organizers should.
Yes, sir. The mother and father are the joint owners of a residential owner property. They are selling the flat and buying a new residential house in which son is the first owner and mother and father are the second owner. If the capital gain is reinvested, whether 54 will be available if they are second and third.
Whose money is going? Whose money is going into the purchase?
Money, all three. For son money is also going, mother and father money is also going.
Son money is also.
The cost of new residential asset is double than the original asset.
The same price of the original asset.
Yeah.
Cost of
Yes,
the
yes.
house is 2 times the cost, the selling price of the old house.
Son is
And
also,
therefore, son is also contributing. Mother and father are contributing whatever they receive from their.
but son is in first name, mother and father second.
The order does not matter. The order does not matter. The investment matters. If you want to be ultra safe, make sure that the purchase agreement mentions the share of each of the owners, and the share of mother and father should be proportionate to the consideration which they are contributing for the purchase of the unit.
Last question, please.
So there is a non-resident Indian who inherited the property under the will of the Indian resident. The Indian resident acquired this property residential house in the year 1975 or 76. The person died in the month of September 2025. Now he is selling that property, maybe say tomorrow or day after. What are the consequences of 2 things? First of all, cost of acquisition, date of acquisition, and our indexation benefit will be available. Initially investing the value of 1/4/2001. That facility will be available to him, even though he is not resident.
112, I want to read the proviso. Can you please show me the proviso to 112? What is the cost? The cost to the previous owner is the cost.
He can increase the 140,000.
Undoubtedly.
Okay.
Undoubtedly. Holding period of the previous owner becomes our holding period, no doubt. The only difficulty is, I want to see the language whether the proviso will apply to him. Because the property was acquired by a resident prior to 23rd July.
Yes.
But the property is being sold by a non-resident.
Non-resident.
So, to my mind, by common sense, it should not apply, but let me see the language. Because to my mind, it is the gain arising to an individual.
Individual.
Who is the resident?
No, non-resident.
Proviso says the indexation will apply to a
Then to resident only, yeah.
resident.
Yeah.
He is a non-resident, so indexation part nahi hai.
Okay, yeah. Only thing, he can replace the value of 1/4/2001.
AI. The act, don't give me AI. Because AI comes up first.
It's a resident.
You can discuss. Sir,
Then this is applicable to a resident.
No,
One के नीचे proviso है, one is
Resident is
applicable
there.
only to resident.
Okay, thank
One
you.
is not applicable. So resident, you have to go to a different subsection of amendment.
So even though he's selling under 2025 Act, because he is selling tomorrow, sir.
Okay.
So capital gain is arising to him.
So instead of 112, you will say 197. What is that?
The section will change, but only thing is that indexation will not be available, replacement is available.
Because at 1.21, which has the proviso, itself is applicable only to a resident.
Yes.
So therefore, there is no question of
The
anything.
index will not be. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Jagdish Punjabi, for the insightful and engaging session. We truly appreciate the time and efforts you are putting. But before we start our protocol, word of thanks, just a few announcements. Before I mean breakfast, people are public is waiting. Just hold on for 2 minutes. I mean Jan is on behind you, and non-Jan will be from this side. So don't I mean mix up. So Jan will be behind you. Number two. Before this session, Punjabi sir asked me what is the women ratio. So on dais you can say sir we 50% participation, 50% participation, women empowerment. So now 3:30 is I mean 11th. Before that, I just announced one thing. My immediate predecessor, Mr. Kailash Katarka is here. He has been nominated as invitee for the Direct Tax Committee of ICIC for the Council year 2026-27 by President of ICIC. So give round of applause. Our JB Nagar Study Circle getting acknowledged at Central Council level also. But immediate predecessor, that is a more recognition. And 11th July, we have blood donation drive at Hotel Kohinoor Continental only, with collaboration of our Tata Memorial Hospital Trust. Along with we have a lot of free consultation, diabetic check, blood sugar random, physiotherapy, blood pressure, eye checkup, general health, CSC, body mass index, free doctor consultation. So we are coordinating with Hinduja Hospital. So if we get very good renowned doctors for free consultation here. So that is in pipeline. So these are the free consultation. Plus we will give very good umbrella of very good quality to each and every blood donor. So that will be our ex-past commander Jayesh Thakurji is sponsoring for those umbrellas. Yes, so it is a invitation for all, not only for the members. Blood donation drive is for all your friends, family, relatives, colleagues, whosoever it is. Please bring large number. We have committed 100 bottles. So we'll breakfast to rate members का खून भी चूसना है इस पर. On one more, I mean, we have our past conveners meeting, we have decided our, I mean, educational offsite of Ayodhya ji, Varanasi and Prayagraj. So, I mean, Vijeta ji is coordinating for this with our past convener. So please coordinate with her. And whosoever I am interested, I am requesting all to come with family. This is not sponsored. This is self-funded. So I requesting all members. So please coordinate with Vijita Jaiswalji and register for your, I mean, because I mean, you know, if you are going outside, a lot of planning takes place, ticketing and hotel booking, everything. So I am requesting all the members. Dates will be, I mean, post Diwali, 11th November to 15th November. So 4 night. Yeah. So now I am requesting my deputy, our deputy teacher Modi, to give a vote of this, formal vote of this.
Thank you, Lalitji. Good morning, friends. I can't hear anybody giving me a good morning. Good morning, friends. Thank you so much. It's my honor and immense pleasure to give a vote of thanks to Jagdish ji for giving us insightful knowledge about the section which is related to us for filing the returns in this period and in the future Income Tax Act 2025. Thank you, Jagdish Bhai, for giving us so much insightful of the comparison of 1970, 1961 and 2025 omits and disomit, which will be helpful for preparing us for the future. Thank you, sir. As in the Sanskrit it says that Anu Bhadra Krato Yantu Vishwantaha. So may global thoughts come from all the sides and all directions so we can prepare for the futures. So thank you, Jagdish ji, for your time and valuable knowledge given us to the JB Nagar Study Circle member. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a great for 15 minutes. It is there. So please be comfortable and don't be hesitate to take the same. Okay.
banner.